and welcome to Legal Affairs. My name is Diamond Liddy, and I'm the public defender for the 19th Judicial Circuit. We have a wonderful show, as I always say, and we're going to be talking about something very, very unique just south of us. And I am very honored to have on the show today Gordon Weeks. Good morning, Gordon.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And he is the Chief Assistant Public Defender for Howard Finkelstein, who is the public defender in the 17th Circuit, correct?
Yes,
which is Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, that area.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's start, before we talk about the cool thing that Broward County is doing that hopefully maybe we can bring up to St. Lucie. Let's get a little bit of your background, Gordon. How long have you been with the Public Defender's Office?
I've been with the Public Defender's Office since 1997.
Wow.
I've practiced in almost every area in the Public Defender's Office. I have a particular discipline with juveniles.
Okay.
I was previously assigned to handle those juveniles that were transferred into the adult system.
Okay. And let's stop you there, because a lot of the viewers, you know, we talk legal, you know, and use the acronyms and the Latin terms and everything, but a lot of our viewers obviously are not lawyers. What do you mean by transferred into the adult system?
In the state of Florida, if a juvenile is involved in a certain type of offense, they can be treated as adults in the court system.
Even though they're not 18
Even
yet.
though they're not 18.
Right.
And I was responsible for representing that population of children because we recognized that those children needed a different approach when it came to their legal defense. They were considerably young of age, and they were looking at a considerable amount of time incarcerated. So
right.
We took a different approach to having a specialized discipline in representing and dealing with those children and their families.
Okay, so in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County then, even since 1997, there were, of course, you're much bigger. Now, let's put things in perspective here, so I'm not feeling bad. How many lawyers work in Broward County, in the Public Defender's Office?
Over 110 lawyers.
Okay.
And about 100 and some odd staff to go with that. We have a pretty big office, and I haven't been doing direct file my entire career.
Okay.
I started off in the juvenile division as a brand new attorney.
Right.
And then graduated through the various different divisions, felony, repeated offender court, and then I was assigned to the specialized direct file division. And then after that, Howard asked me to head up the juvenile division, and I've been running the juvenile division for approximately 5 years now.
Okay, and and I didn't want to get away from your background, but primarily, I guess it's safe to say that your heart or your primary focus since 1997 has been for the kids, with juveniles.
You know, I've always recognized that, you know, there's a different approach when it comes to children with children, especially when they're involved in the criminal justice system. They have different considerations. They have a family. They have decision making that's a lot different than an adult. They process information differently, and some of the actions that cause them to be in the system are based on
the juvenile brain.
Yes, you know, they're kids.
Yes, right.
You know, they're brain damaged by design, and they make very
right.
very poor decisions.
Right, right. So for the last 5 years, then, you've been the head, if you will, of the juvenile division for Broward County.
Yes, ma'am.
How many lawyers under you?
We have 16 attorneys, 2 dispositional specialists, and a number of staff members that help us out.
And what is a dispositional specialist?
We have a specialized position created for a social worker. We have 2 social workers that work alongside the attorneys to help identify family needs and client-based needs, to identify services for drug abuse, mental health issues, parenting issues, to try to stabilize that home environment so even after they are done with the juvenile justice system, they can go back into an environment that will allow them not to re-engage in the juvenile justice system.
Right.
We're trying to reduce the recidivism of these children, and we recognize that you have to do that with a holistic approach. You have to deal with the mother, you have to deal with the family, you have to deal with what's going on with the child in school.
Right.
And that's how we got a lot of our work directed towards the school, because we recognized that that was one of the areas that we did not have a good grasp on what was going on.
Well, and it's so funny because, of course, we take a holistic approach to public defending as well in this circuit, and it's so exciting to know that there are other public defender offices, if you will, that know that yes, our primary job is to represent juveniles, adults in the courtroom, and to do it ethically, zealously, etc. But that you've got to do more. You have a moral duty, if you will, if anything, else, to go the extra mile, take the extra steps, because especially in the juvenile arena, oh my gosh, you have such great potential to make a difference,
exactly,
to turn their lives around so that they aren't back within the system. Okay, so now that we know about you, Gordon, the 17th Circuit has started a very cool program called the Promise Program.
Yes.
Okay, tell us what that's about.
In the 17th Circuit, we had a lot of discussion about the number of children that were suspended and expelled and arrested from schools. And that conversation was had on many different levels with school board officials, superintendents, administrators at the school, and with the court system, because when they were arrested, they then entered into the juvenile justice system. We saw a trend anecdotally of very minor offenses coming into the juvenile system that started in the school system. And as a result, we started to talk. We started to ask questions, and eventually all the parties got together on a routine basis to discuss the issue. The parties were the largest sheriff in the county, the largest police municipality in the county, the state attorney's office, the public defender's office, the superintendent of the school board, a school board member from the school board, administrators from the school board, a delinquency judge in Broward County, along with community members and community activists, the NAACP and the Advancement Project from Washington, D.C., all sat down and talked about this.
And how long ago did this concept first start?
Oh, it started many, many years ago.
Yeah, I know. Okay, yeah. So next month we can't do this,
no,
right? Okay, but
it started years ago. I was invited into the conversation about 6 or 7 years ago, and it started with just a very small group of 2 individuals, a representative from Representative Perry Thurston's office and the president of the NAACP, and it was a 3-person conversation with the school board. But as the conversation grew over the years, and as the data started to bear out that there was a large number of children being arrested, a large number of children being suspended and expelled from schools for relatively minor offenses, the discussion became, what do we do about that?
And let's back up, because people have a jaundiced view, and I've seen it work both ways. Some people think what I think are serious crimes as what's the big deal, and then you have the group that think that the not so serious things are a huge deal. But when you talk about minor offenses, if you will, that happen at school that you're kind of targeting, and we're going to get to that in a minute, what are you talking about, Gordon?
We saw cases where children were arrested for shooting a spitball in the class.
Ooh, that is minor. Okay.
We saw cases where children were arrested for throwing a lollipop in the class. We saw cases where children were arrested for yelling profanities down the hallway.
Right. None of which, nobody's saying you should do that.
It's not appropriate.
But, yeah.
It's not appropriate behavior. It's misbehavior. but it's not behavior that should result in criminalization of that child,
right,
entering them into the juvenile justice
right,
system.
Right.
And that was the conversation. We had a series of cases, and we had a series of events, and we had some discussion. And when you have those folks that are in charge of making decisions and looking at increasing the graduation rate in the school and reducing the arrest rate, it was a climate that was there for reform.
Right.
You know, we've had a climate in this country, in this state, for zero tolerance, but the data does not support that zero tolerance works.
Right.
There has been a significant reduction in the graduation rate and an increase in the number of children that are arrested, suspended, and expelled from school as a result of zero tolerance.
Right.
And what zero tolerance has done is robbed all those administrators, all those educators that are trying to educate children. It has robbed their ability to affect change in those children's lives and shifted the control of the school to a school resource officer who's now looking at discipline issues, and educators looking at education issues.
Sure.
So we had that conversation. Who should be in charge of discipline in a school? And like every parent in their own home, they're in charge of discipline in their home.
Right, right.
And especially for minor behaviors.
Right, right.
And we had that conversation that, you know, if it were a violent offense, a child bringing a gun on school grounds,
no, of
anything
course.
like that, you know, you've
got to take serious. Sure,
the
sure.
police are going to be called, and they should rightly be called,
right?
Because the school needs to be safe. But if it was something minor, a child yelling profanities or throwing a spitball, or you know, you needed to have those professionals who are educators, who had a lot more resources available to them than we do have in the court system.
Right.
You know, they have had
to be able to intervene, to make some,
They've had social psychologicals. They've had assessments of any behavioral issues or educational issues or learning disabilities.
Right.
They know how to affect change in that child's life. They just need to have the opportunity. And we had a superintendent that recognized that this was an important issue that needed to be addressed. We have the 6th largest school district in the nation, and we had
really?
Yes, and we were leading
in the nation.
In the nation, and
wow.
we were leading the state of Florida in the number of arrests for nonviolent misdemeanors. And
that's a catalyst, sure.
We had a discussion, and based on that discussion, the folks around the table recognized that we were robbing a lot of children of opportunities in the future because they were going to be saddled with an arrest on their record that even if they were successful in completing school and going to college, you know, I've had children come back to my office years later that had difficulty getting jobs, had difficulty getting a job in a doctor's office,
right.
or as a nurse, or, you know, because that minor offense when they were a child is now prohibiting them from moving forward in their life.
Well, and not to interrupt, but, you know, we've had this conversation on the show before. I mean, and you've got to say it again and again, you know, if we can send any message to the public or to parents, it's don't take these kinds of things lightly if they get arrested or whatever, because it's not back like it was back in the day where, you know, there's double, triple secret, and if there's any issue, nobody ever knew about it, and you couldn't reveal the arrest or the discipline or anything like that. I mean, this stuff follows these children forever.
It's the age of the internet. It's the age of technology.
Exactly.
You know, everyone has access to this information. You know, and having that discussion with law enforcement, and having that discussion with educators and the state attorney, having that discussion being led by the Advancement Project and the NAACP, and then having the court enter in that discussion.
Sure.
Because the court was the most pivotal part in this whole conversation.
Right.
Because the courts were not involved in the initial brainstorming about the idea.
Right.
But when we recognized that there were some impetus to do something, that we had the will as a community to address this issue. We didn't know what to do.
Right. So, and you had to get the courts involved because that was a, crucial part.
We didn't know what to do as a community because we didn't know what the solution was to reduce the number of children being arrested in school. So the court, we had a local circuit judge who was in the juvenile division, had a conversation with another judge in Atlanta, Clay County, Georgia. And that judge in Clay County, Georgia had piloted a similar initiative in Georgia. And in Georgia, they created a written agreement that all of the parties ceremonially sat around a table and signed. And through the signing of that agreement, they made a effort to reduce the school board to jailhouse pipeline.
So how does it work?
We did the same thing. We created that agreement,
right.
And that agreement basically identifies the types of charges that would remain in the control of the school for the school to deal with,
right.
And to address those behaviors. And we also found that educators speak a different language than attorneys.
Oh, sure.
Educators define things different,
right.
than attorneys.
Sure.
So we had to come up with some common baseline. What would not
warrant getting into the criminal justice? Gotcha.
And we all settled on the statutory language for nonviolent misdemeanors. We all know what a nonviolent misdemeanor is. It's clearly defined in the statute what a nonviolent misdemeanor constitutes. And
spitballs. Yeah, right.
And we laid those things out.
Right.
And when we all agreed that these were the nonviolent misdemeanors that we would allow the school to address independently, and they had made a commitment to put resources in place to address those behaviors, everyone signed the agreement. And everyone tried to support the implementation of the agreement. There's been a lot of details, but you have to have the broad vision of where you're going.
Right.
And then all those respective players can work on putting the infrastructure in place to make it come to life.
So what happens, Gordon? So there's a nonviolent misdemeanor that happens in a school, and so simply the educators.
What happens is what happened when I was in school.
Right. Okay.
An educator saw misbehavior.
It deals with it.
They would refer the child to the principal.
Right.
The principal then would address the child, address the parents, and then refer the child to the Promise program. And the Promise program is the real bread and potatoes of what's going on, because the school really invested in resources to address that child's behavior. You know, they have an individual education plan for the children, where they identify, you know, if they're not doing well in this class or this issue, and they work on their educational needs. But they also are able to identify any behavioral issues or
right.
any
or parent issues, okay.
or any learning disorders or any drug issues. And while they have that child with all of the resources around them, they send them to an off-site school. They have the parent buy into the off-site school, and they deal with this behavior for a number of weeks. And then they transition them back into their home school, and they continue the support when they transition back into the home school. And there's been, you know, a reduction of about 40% of arrests in this year alone. That's about 1,000 children that have participated in the Promise program. We are knocking on wood that it will be a great success. And the commitment thus far has been to institutionalize this framework into the system so that no matter who comes in the future, this will be how things are done. This is a new approach to dealing with children. This is isn't anything new.
Right.
This is a common sense approach that was used in the past.
Right.
that was very effective.
Before there wasn't any discretion, before
Correct.
there wasn't any comments, before we didn't allow the educators to do what they do best and make their own decisions. Yeah.
And what we did was we memorialized a common sense approach to deal with children minor misbehavior in school, and we recognize that police officers are going to still
make arrests
for violent offenses. You know, anything that is threatening a child's safety or or the safety of children in school, they're going to make arrests and they're going to protect the school like they should. But if it is something, you know, something going on in the child's home, you know, we find that, you know, divorces or separations or living situations, you know, if they have, you know, not consistency in the home environment, that manifests into outbursts or behavior in school.
Well, sure, you can have a great kid for years and years, and then their parents are going through a divorce, and all of a sudden Johnny is using profanity where he never did before.
Correct.
That doesn't mean we arrest him and give him a juvenile. Yeah, right.
We have to find out what's going on and try to address it.
So, you're not going to believe this. We're almost at. We got about 5-6 minutes. I know it's amazing. It goes so fast. I just want to make sure. So we've got the concept clear. You get all the players at the table. Everybody agrees what offenses, if you will, would qualify. Then, of course, everybody has to agree and agree to the agreement.
Yes.
But then basically if a child commits those offenses, then they are referred to this Promise program. And then the Promise program is kind of a one-step, you know, one-stop
yes.
Approach to figuring out what's going on, how we can deal with it. And would they automatically go to this alternative school for a period or not necessarily?
It depends on the level of the offense.
I got you.
Some offenses can be dealt with in the school environment.
Okay.
But they have established in every school and off-site the framework to identify the child's needs.
Okay, so if it's not a big deal, if it's a first-time spitball offense, then they may not have to go to the off-site school. They are still referred to the Promise program, figure out what the issues are, but they can remain in the school and go on without an arrest.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the things that we built into this agreement was a consistent and continual review of the agreement. Is constantly being tweaked.
Okay. And how long have you actually had the Promise program? Okay.
This is our first school year with the Promise program.
Well, and that's why we were so excited. And when Mickey told me about it and stuff, I said, oh my gosh, this is great. You know, because the St. Lucie County School Board is always trying to do the right thing, to get involved with the kids and make sure that they're looking out for the children's best interest in the community. And when she told me about what you all were doing in Fort Lauderdale, I said, "Oh my goodness, this is so cool and such a great great idea."
What's so great about this is that with the will of your community attempting to do this, it would be great because this is a model that can be easily replicated in any community.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Correct. Right. And what we were advised to do from Clay County, Judge Teskey.
You didn't reinvent the wheel. Right.
We were advised that things are going to work differently in your community, and you have to work within the framework of the people in the community and those folks that have the ability to affect change in the community.
Right.
And work with them and find what fits or what works for your community.
Well, and let's face now, no disrespect to Broward County now, but it is a different, I love Howard.
Yes.
Known him forever. When I was a prosecutor, I don't know if he told you, we used to try cases together when he was in private practice and stuff. So we go way, 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 way back. But Howard's style would not fit in this community because we are much more conservative, you know, and I love it, you know, and I wouldn't fit in Broward County, you know. So you're right. It has to be anything like this would have to be tweaked with the community's concerns and the way their slant and what they feel is most important, etc.
And that's the beauty, because when this agreement was finally unveiled, it was a collaborative of over 50 people from the community that would sit around the table on a monthly basis to talk about this agreement.
Right.
So there was a lot of community input. And in your community or any other community that's considering this, it can be done. It's just you have to have the will to do it.
Right.
And in our community, we agree on a lot of things,
and
we
you don't
disagree
agree.
on a
No,
lot of other things.
I know.
But we were able to do it, and we have a very large school system, and we have a very large juvenile justice system. And I would encourage anyone, if they need assistance or advice or technical information, there's resources out there. We didn't do it alone.
Right.
We had folks come in
can't.
and help us. The Advancement Project helped us. The NAACP helped us. The courts helped us. It can be done.
No, and of course, I'm prejudiced, if you will, for the 19th Circuit as far as the great collaborative efforts we have here. But we are way ahead of most circuits and counties in the state. In that, the school board, the courts, the state attorney's office, law enforcement, we all work so well together on so many things. So that's when I heard about this, I said, "Oh my goodness! If it can happen anywhere, it can happen here." We have about a minute left, Gordon. Believe it or not. Quickly, anything you want to. You've been involved for so many years. You've got so many years of experience. Any just passing final words about the system or juveniles in general?
Just encourage folks to recognize that children are a little bit different. They have so much opportunity. They have so much potential, and with that opportunity and potential, we folks that are in a position to affect change, they do everything in our power to give them the chance to meet their full potential.
Right, and we can't throw away the baby with the bathwater, as they say. We've got to always be optimistic and know, but know that the phrase that the mantra most recently, and I know you've heard of it, is juveniles are different.
Yes.
They're not adults, so we have to take that into consideration.
Very much so. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, Gordon, this has been great, and I hope we can emulate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.